Good morning and welcome to A Second Chance. My name is Philip Jones. Today we start off the month of July collaboration with the YNOTT Foundation, which is Youth Need Organ Tissue and Transplant. And this month I have a real good friend, our Florida representative, Mr. Tafaro Cook, joining me on the show as my co-host. And then our special guest is also Why Not family, been part of Why Not for a long time, a lot longer than myself. So, um, Tony and Victoria, appreciate you guys coming on today. Mr. Cook, I appreciate you joining. So you guys already kind of know how I go into my show. So, Tony, Victoria, the floor is yours. It's about you today. Go ahead and give the people your story. And again, I appreciate you being on this morning.
Well, thank you for having us. My story begins, I was born in 1961, and about 9 months after I was born, it was discovered that I had a birth defect where my one kidney was destroyed, and the other kidney, I only had about half of it left. So, around my first birthday, I had the one kidney removed, and the other kidney was repaired as best they could at that time. Uh, but they warned my parents that I probably wouldn't live past 5 years old. But fortunately, I did pass that. Lived a fairly normal life. Was tired a lot, but otherwise did pretty much everything I could do. And unfortunately, in my 20, when I was turned 22, my kidney failed, the what was left of it. So my family decided that they wanted to be a living donor. One of them, which was going to try. My brother, my mother, and my sister were all tested. My mother was a pretty good match. My sister was a very good match, but my brother turned out to be an excellent match. 6 antigen out of 6 antigen, perfect match. So on March 16th, 1984, 37 years ago, we had the transplant, and it's worked excellent ever since. I fulfilled a lifelong dream 3 months after my transplant, and I tried out for the Cincinnati Reds. Uh, was not signed, uh, but it was an amazing experience. I eventually married, had a son, uh, but unfortunately, the marriage did end in divorce, and but this is where I met Victoria.
So, and I was also born with a kidney disease called reflux nephropathy. My mom fought with doctors off and on because she knew something was wrong. So finally, after fighting with them at age 3, they referred me to a nephrologist, and the nephrologist discovered the disease. And then from there on, I was in and out of hospitals my whole life. She, how I was able to maintain it with doctors' instructions until 6 weeks after I graduated from high school. And that's when we were told that I would need my first kidney transplant. And of course, at that time, my parents both wanted to be tested. My siblings were both still really young. And it was found that my mom could not be a living donor because of adulthood diabetes running in her family. But it was found that my dad was a good match. He matched 4 out of 6 antigens. And so on July 16th of 1993, my dad gave me my first kidney. Unfortunately, the native kidneys are not normally removed upon transplant, and the disease that I had in my native kidneys dropped down into my dad's kidney and slowly killed my dad's as well. So his kidney only lasted 3 years. And at that time, I had married my first husband, and he had asked if he could be tested so that I didn't have to go on dialysis. And the doctor said anybody could be tested, but it wasn't guaranteed he'd be a match. However, he was a match, and he matched as well as my dad did. So on April 9th of 96, he gave me my second kidney. But unfortunately, we all get those warnings when we go into surgery that things could go wrong, but rarely do. But I ended up being the rarely do with that transplant, and it got a blood clot in it 6 hours after surgery. And I woke up on a ventilator 10 days later to the news that I now had no kidneys in my body working and I needed to have another transplant or go on dialysis. At that time, I wasn't willing to take another living donor because of what had happened with my first two donors in just a 3-year time period. So I went on peritoneal dialysis, where they insert a tube in your abdomen and you get to hook up on the machine every night. And for 6.5 years, I did that style of dialysis. Well, for 6 years, I did that style. Got peritonitis and had to go on hemodialysis, where I had a port in my chest. And I went 3 days a week to a facility and they did that dialysis for me. Unfortunately, my body did not handle this style of dialysis well. So they went to my family and said, if she doesn't get one in the next 6 months, she won't be here. So that's when my baby brother was tested, told me that I had two choices, that I let him give me a kidney or that I die. And when you put it that way, there's really no choice. So on March 4th of 2003, my brother gave me the kidney that I still have today. It's the best kidney function I've had in my life has been with this kidney. And unfortunately as well, my first marriage didn't work out. But I met Tony at the transplant games a long time when we were both still actually married. And we had been friends for a really long time. And so we ended up going to a Team Ohio event up in Cleveland, Ohio, with a bunch of other team members, and got to talking, and ended up we were going through our divorces for the same reason. And we just had so much in common that the rest was history. We've been together ever since. So that was December 4th of 2010. So now I'm kind of stuck with him because we said I do. September 19th of 2015. So it's a little bit of our story.
That's an amazing story, and how everything kind of comes together for both of you in a great way. Mr. Cook, you have any questions?
Yes. Where was your Tony? Where was your transplant at?
My transplant was done at Miami Valley Hospital in Dayton, Ohio. They do not do transplants anymore. They quit that program about 5 or 6 years ago. They only did kidneys at the time. They only did kidneys throughout their entire transplant process. But they felt that they weren't getting enough surgeries per year to keep the program going, so they discontinued it.
Okay. And Tony, again, at your levels, I mean, that's pretty amazing for you to be going so strong. I mean,
Thank you.
We hear the stories and everything. So, I mean, you talking about time wise, man. Your career right here, your baseball career probably wasn't the best, but your career right here is the best. I just really want to say and everything. Your doctors, they probably love you. So, are your doctors at Ohio State now, or where are you getting watched at?
I have a nephrologist in Dayton.
Okay.
My original nephrologist, he retired after my 25th anniversary. And I continued with his practice with another nephrologist for the past 12 years.
And I just got to ask one more question with you. Okay. What's your creatinine usually run? I mean, I know it's stable. So what's it usually run like?
My creatinine normally ran 1.2, 1.3. About 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, it was discovered that my ureter was being strangled by.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, it was being strangled by scar tissue. And so now I have to have ureter stent replacements every 6 months to keep the ureter open.
Right.
So my creatinine runs right around 2.4, 2.3. That's my normal range right now.
And Victoria, you feel well, and I see you, not see you as much because I'm in Florida now, but Victoria, you're doing wonderful and everything. And what's your creatinine usually run, Victoria?
Yeah, this is our competition that I will always win since I will never win years. Mine runs honestly 0.7 to 0.9. So what a normal person's would run with 2 kidneys.
Okay. And for the guests, creatinine is one of the levels that transplant recipients we have to watch, and that's showing how much clearance we're getting in our kidneys as far as functioning wise. I just want to let our guests understand that. Go ahead, Phil. I'm sorry.
Oh no, man. Hey, Anthony, I told you, man. We have no restrictions here, man. But I do have a question. It's a similar question for both of you, but it's actually a different, I guess, kind of different wording. But Tony, what was your life like living with basal kidney disease? Like, how was your, like, because you did something that I have to do a lot, which was skip a lot in time. So because I was diagnosed at 4 years old, and so but I stayed at 30% with no dialysis or anything between 4 and 16. So it's like a gap in there. Like, hey, life seemed regular for me, but of course we know it wasn't. I'm dealing with a life-threatening illness as a kid, but it doesn't show it. It doesn't seem that way. So.
Right.
How was it for you having to deal with those things as a kid in between that time when things kind of started, and then I guess when you had to make adjustments? I don't necessarily say things got worse, but I guess you could say they kind of flipped around, and you had to make some changes in certain places. So, like, what was that time in between growing up?
Well, my childhood and into my teens was pretty normal. I did pretty much everything and anything that I wanted. I know that periodically I would get more tired than normal and I'd have to rest. So that, I didn't really have a different childhood than most people. It was pretty normal. I didn't discover that my kidney was going bad until I was trying to get into the Navy during my physical. They took the blood and the urine and said, you're in renal failure right now. I had no idea I was. And so that's, when people ask me, well, you must have had a rough time during your childhood, teen years. I really didn't. My kidney had 10 to 15% function at that point, but I didn't feel different. That's all I knew. So maybe if I had the 80, 90, 100% function, I would have known the difference, but I didn't know any different than what I had. So until I was actually diagnosed being in renal failure, after that was when I could really, within the next few months, I could feel myself going downhill, and actually fairly quickly.
And Tony, you were a high level athlete, so and none of that affected your athleticism. I'm pretty sure you played other sports than baseball. You probably played everything, and you played at a high level with your kidneys not even functioning at 50%. That's pretty amazing, man. And you didn't even know.
Yeah, truly the only other sport I played was basketball. My parents wouldn't allow me to play football because of only having the one kidney and the damaged kidney at that. So I did play basketball as well as baseball. So I wouldn't say I was a high class athlete. But
high enough. You got to look for the Reds. A lot of people play all kinds of stuff and never get a look from a major league team. So that's pretty exceptional.
Right. It was just something I felt I had to do since I got this new chance and felt amazing afterwards. I just felt I had to at least try and see what would happen. And it was a great experience.
Awesome. Yeah, my doctor actually encouraged me uh to play sports, and keep active because the consistency of the exercising and lifting. Even though I was on 30%, they were like, no, I want you to go, out there, play sports, live your life, and so um, I was very active in sports as well. I played football, ran track, so I was consistently at some kind of practice, doing some kind of lifting, but I actually think if anybody here is kind of like wondering about that, you don't have to necessarily do heavy lifting or heavy exercising, but what that can do for you pre-transplant is put you in a better position for recovery post-transplant. I mean, it took me no time to recover after I had my transplant. My doctor was looking at me like, "You're not tired, hurting, nothing." I'm like, "Nah, I'm good." It's like, I said, I'm okay. I'm all right. Let me go ahead and get through this appointment so I can go do something. So, but yeah, exercising is a key thing, I think, for pre-transplant. Post also, it's very important to kind of either get back in that shape that you were already at pre-transplant, or just to get in shape in general. Um, you know, just to kind of to be healthy, period. So and so okay, so my next question is for Victoria. So it's kind of like I said, it's equivalent to Tony's, but it's a tad different because in that time as being a youth, you said you were in and out of the hospital. So how was that experience, having to be a kid and you're like in out the hospital? It's like, okay, I'm outside playing one day, and then the next day I'm sitting in this hospital bed looking at the ceiling. So how did you deal with that as a kid?
Uh, when I was really young, it was very difficult because I had brothers at home. So it was always, most of the time, my parents had to be at home with them. So my grandparents would help out at being at the hospital with me, and they would have to switch in and out. My whole first grade year, because I had my first surgery when I was 6 to try and prolong what health I would have with my native kidneys. Um, I missed my whole first year and had to have tutors in the hospital in order to progress from first grade. Um, and then, you always have where your siblings are going and doing this because they're trying to keep them entertained. And then you feel like you're missing out on that, but you kind of understand because they're missing out on having their parent present quite a bit. And then as I got into junior high and high school, like there were several times the squad had to be called um, to the school. And then, of course, the rumors started of why the squad was being called. I don't know how many times in high school I was pregnant and losing a baby because the squad was called to the high school. So it was just crazy things like that were sometimes hard to deal with. And then you come back to school and all the questions. And so stuff like that was definitely difficult to deal with. And then, I was totally opposite, to where the schools wouldn't allow me to play sports at school because they didn't want the liability of my disease if I would get sick during a game or something. So all the sports that I had to play had to be rec sports outside of the school. So that was really difficult for me because I really loved softball and I liked volleyball a lot. I wasn't that great at it, but I love volleyball, and I just was too short. So it was difficult for me not to be able to play school sports with all of my friends because the school wouldn't allow it for me. So
Wow. Yeah, for me that's hard to hear because I don't think, unless somebody's like physical condition is bearing, like they have easy broken bones or something to that effect, I don't think that they should be denied to be able to play sports, especially if it's not a contact sport. If it's not a contact sport, I mean, it's like, just let the kid play. I can
I did have
understand.
broken bones a lot because my calcium levels were,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
developing correctly because you're getting too much phosphorus, not enough calcium.
Right.
So, I mean, I think I broke my ankle like 4 times between the age of 12 and 16. So, I did get broken bones a lot. So, but I mean, that could happen to me back then. That could happen to anybody.
Right.
So it was harder to see back then than it is to see now, of why they would say it's a liability to allow me to play a school sport.
Oh.
I mean, I
So
could definitely see that happening because when I was on dialysis, phosphorus plays a big part, and when that's fluctuating up and down, I've seen people walk up and down the steps and kneecaps break literally because the phosphorus is high, and I mean we can all relate to that. So I can see the school as far as the superintendent and stuff like that being precaution because if something bad could have happened, that school could have got sued and all kinds of stuff could have went bad. So I do feel that.
Yeah.
Getting back to where you're saying about being in shape before and after transplant, they told me that I would be in the hospital anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. Of course, this was 1984, and transplants weren't that prevalent. I was out in 10 days. And at that time, that was a record at that hospital for a transplant getting out that quickly. So yes, being in shape before and after is the ultimate thing to do.
Yeah.
definitely. So both of you are from Ohio, or because I know Tony said he is, but Victoria, have you always been in Ohio yourself?
I have always been in Ohio. I'm from the central Ohio area, and he's from the southern Ohio area. We actually lived 2 hours apart when we first started dating. So the state of Ohio can be pretty spread out.
Right. So my next question, and I'll go into a real quick break after this. How did both of you get acquainted to the transplant games?
I actually saw a pamphlet for it back in 1997, I believe, concerning the 96 games. And I was wondering what it was all about. So I talked to my nephrologist, and he truly did not know much about it. So he got me in contact with Lifeline of Ohio, which was the local organ procurement organization in Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
Life Connection.
I'm sorry, with Lifeline now.
Life Connection
of Ohio, my fault. And they directed me or let me know that the next transplant games would be in Columbus in 1998.
Mm.
So that's how I originally knew about it and became involved with Team Ohio, was in actually 1998.
And for me, it was actually, I was on dialysis. And my dialysis doctor is actually the one that said, hey, you need to go to these games. You need to see success stories. You've been through a lot. This is not normally how it goes. It's just a freak thing. Because I was really nervous about my third transplant and really struggling with the fact of doing it again. And so he's like, you just need to go and you need to see these successes and you need to meet these people. And that was actually the 2002 games, and they were in Orlando, Florida. So I went on dialysis, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. And from there on out, it was like, okay, I'm going to get my transplant. I'm going to go to these games, and I'm going to be the success story. And it just completely changed my mindset about that third transplant and about where I wanted to be. And so then I did. I didn't get to go in 2004 because I had Epstein-Barr. But then in 2006 in Louisville, Kentucky, I went to the games for the first time with my brother. He actually went with me. And was able to actually be a part of them. So that's actually where I met Tony the first time, was in Louisville, Kentucky in 2006. So,
well, transplant games doing more than just telling success stories, I see. So, right. Mr. Cook, you've been to the games before. I think we had this conversation the other day, but I can't remember exactly your story.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You went with Team Ohio as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did too. I did Houston and Cleveland. Those were the only two I've done. Yeah.
And that was at 2012 and 14 or something like that?
14 and 16.
14, 16.
14 and 16. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you went in between my times. So my first one was in 08 in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
That was when NKF was over the games, and then
right.
I know Bill Ryan took over and kind of somewhat started his own thing. He kind of he changed some things, changed the name. Now it's the Transplant Games of America. And he added and took away some components and things like that, and also kept a lot of things the same. So, and then I didn't go again because I kind of dealt with so much in between time. But I went back again in 18 in Utah.
Yeah.
Right, which is actually where I met Edward. So, the games is an awesome experience. I was not expecting to see what I did see my first time there. I was like, I don't want to make it seem like it's an athletic thing for me, but I technically was like kind of halfway recruited for this thing. And because I remember when I went in for a trip to see my transplant nephrologist, and me and him had such a great relationship. He would, we'd always talk about everything else under the moon, but what I'm actually there to talk about. And I mean, this guy, he's one of the coolest guys, next to my pediatric nephrologist that I had in the past before I came switched and ended up having my transplant. But he was like, hey, this lady's here. I want her to do this presentation for you about something. I think you'll really enjoy this and like it. And I'm like, not knowing what to expect. I'm like, I don't know what's coming. So I remember I get in the room and this lady had put this whole little tribe, thing together, things you get for like science fairs and stuff, and it had all kind of pictures and stuff. She had, pamphlets and stuff. I'm like, am I about to sit here for 3 hours for you to explain something? I'm like, I don't even like being at these appointments this long, and you're gonna sit here and add time to it. But she did her presentation, and she was a real nice lady. She was actually from the Pittsburgh area. She had just moved out here to Los Angeles. I remember her name was Lily, and so it was crazy because she's, when she got done, she looks at me, she goes, "Do you think that's something that you'd like to do?" Now, at this time, I'm 17 years old. I'm still in high school. So the financial part to this is not looking the best for me. Like I could just say, yeah, I want to go. I can do that, And I told her, I said, look, I would love to go. What you explained to me looked like a great experience. I said, but I'm going to tell you where my issue lies. Financially, I don't know if this is going to happen. I said, that's kind of the only thing that's kind of holding me back from just telling you yes. And like I said, I'm 17. My dad and my stepmom have a daughter as well. So it's like, it's not like I'm the only kid and I'm just sitting there and they could just, throw money my way just because. Otherwise, I'd have been like, yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to tell you the coolest thing outside of this man being my nephrologist and actually caring about me. The coolest thing this dude did was say this to me. He asked me the same question she did. He said, hey, how do you feel about this? You want to go? You think you want to go? I said, yeah. I said, but I'm going to tell you the exact same answer I gave her. I said, it's going to be a financial situation for me. And he looked me dead in the eyes, didn't blink or anything, and said, don't worry about it. We'll pay for it.
That's awesome.
That's nice.
Because I always
And
said, I used to be a manager for Team Ohio. I was for the 16 and 18 games both. And I always tell people, if we get you there one time, that's all we need. You're hooked, because it's an experience of a lifetime. But a lot of it is financial, and we do a lot of fundraising as a team. But to send somebody there completely is amazing.
I tell you, man, I think what I liked about it was the camaraderie of I got emotional the first time I went when I seen all these people.
Oh, definitely.
Like yourself that survived. And I mean, that's where I was. And every time I went, because just to see everybody, you know, so happy that literally we all got a second, third chance, you know, to do that. And don't get me wrong, everybody wants to play and be competitive and everything, but I had my competitive days. I was really happy just to be around so many like-minded people. That's where I was.
Yeah, I always say first and last get cheered for just as loud, which amazes, you know.
Yeah, my first time I was asked, would I be disappointed if I didn't get a medal? And I mean, I'm competitive. I'm just as competitive as anybody else. And the first thing at the top of my head was like, oh, no, this is going to be an amazing experience, seeing over 1,000 athletes just like me who have gone through exactly what I went through. So, medals, yeah, that's nice, but my God, this is going to be fantastic. And I didn't care whether I got a medal or not. I just wanted to experience it.
And for us, both of our first medals went to our donors anyway, so it's just not what
that's the way I felt about it too, man. I mean, I played athletics and things like that, but just to be around, like I said again, the emotion to be around so many like-minded people that we all have a story that's very, very unique to that individual. And if you listen to anybody's story in this area, we can all learn, and I'm learning from everybody and everybody's experience, from kids to somebody 80 years old. I'm learning, so that's what I like about it.
Yeah, it was a great experience for me. I can't even lie to you. I definitely was emotional as well. My first time going, I was emotional the second time I went. And for me, the second time was a different type of emotion, because I had to go through so much just to get back. And it wasn't like I didn't want to, or if it was like an accident the first time or whatever. Like, I wanted to go back, but I dealt with so many downfalls health wise in between those years. It basically handcuffed me from being able to go. So I remember we were coming down in the we were in the baseball, if I remember the name of the stadium, but where the opening ceremonies were, and I was walking down the steps, and I just it felt like my first time again. And I'm just looking around, I'm like, this is awesome. And it was awesome to me because as a kid growing up, I didn't know anybody else with any type of organ failure, bone, or anything like that. So to be, that first time to be in the convention center with all these transplant patients, donors, donor families, transplant families, in one setting like that, was an awesome experience for me. Like I said, the only people that I ever talked to that was transplant related was somebody I might see at, sitting there waiting on my appointment or something like that. Right. At monthly or bi-monthly clinics and stuff like that after I had my transplant. Outside of that, I had never really talked to anybody with, or any kid at least, with the transplant. And that's one of my biggest reasons for joining you guys at the YNOTT Foundation, is to find those kids that kind of had, growing up kind of like how I did, with not knowing anyone, with that experience, and just kind of reassuring them, like, look, you're not alone in this. it's a bunch of us, adults, kids, that are all going through the same fight. We're fighting together, and so that's a big reason why, like I said, as soon as I talked to Edward in Utah and he kind of explained, what the YNOTT Foundation was, because before I met him, I had not a clue what YNOTT was. And I'm like, looking, I'm like, hey man, I'm like, what's YNOTT? And he gave me a rundown, explained it. Honestly, before I actually got in, I was already hooked in. So
I get it, because I met Edward in the hospital right after his transplant, and he's infectious that way, because it was, I had been working with kids at Kappa Kidney Camp here in Ohio for a long time, because I was the same, didn't have anybody growing up other than the people I met at the hospital. And so I started going to camp that was put on by the NKF as well back then, and they got me involved in it. So I started going a long time ago, and then I met Edward in the hospital when he got his transplant. He's like, I have this great idea, and he just hooks you in, and then you're like, you are doing great things for the kids, because they need it so much, because it's hard enough going through the illness. If you don't have anybody there to pull you up when you have those lows, it could be extremely suffocating, I feel like. And that's what YNOTT has done for a lot of these kids. It is just, it stops them from getting to that low of a low, and they need it so much.
All right, well, I'm gonna take a break right here. I know we're all kind of, getting a little bit deep into this, even especially kind of, I think a little bit emotionally, but just kind of give everybody a breather, get everybody get back on track. And I have a few more questions. I'm sure Mr. Cook has some as well, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to A Second Chance. My name is Philip Jones, the host. Today I have Victoria and Tony here with us, and my special co-host, Mr. Tafaro Cook. Um, so my question for you, Victoria, is what was how were you mentally um in between each transplant, like, and how did you cope with that, having to go through that process multiple times?
I did okay after the first because we had a reason as to why I lost my dad's. And they were removing my native kidneys before doing a second one. So I did okay between the first and second. But after losing my ex-husband's, his got a blood clot 6 hours after surgery. They did clotting studies on him. They did clotting studies on me, and there really was no answer as to what happened with that kidney. So I struggled quite a bit with losing his, and then it didn't help that all within a year's time I lost his kidney. I started dialysis, and I lost my Grammy, who was my rock and the one that was at the hospital with me a lot when my mom couldn't be. um, so I struggled a lot and actually ended up in some depression and had to go to counseling um, for almost a year to kind of cope with all these changes that were going on in my life, and with starting dialysis and what that meant. And at the time, I was like, I don't think I can do this again. Um, and the first dialysis center that I went to was not a good fit for me. And actually, it was crazy because my dialysis driver who delivered my supplies to me every month, I just was talking to him about it because, you become close to those guys. They're there every month.
Yep. Yep.
And so he's like, you know what? You need to check out this center and this doctor specifically. And that was kind of a turning point for me because that doctor really was my advocate and my champion, and was like, you can do and he's the one that said, you need to see positive. Let's go see some positive. So you're not so focused on this one negative in your life. And that really was a turning point for me. And so then the waiting list didn't seem so overwhelming. The longer I waited, the harder it got. And then in that time of that 6 years, I had one dry run where I went to the hospital. They thought they had a kidney for me. And then they put the kidney on the perfusion machine and it wasn't pumping properly. So I got sent home to continue waiting. Um, and so but I was able to deal with those hiccups a little better after I switched doctors and switched dialysis centers. It was the best choice for me, definitely. And then, my brother saying what he said, like, you can take another living donor, or was what I needed to hear at the time. Everybody thought he was being a little harsh, but I didn't, because if you wouldn't have put it the way he put it. But I remember I had one phone call when after he had already been tested and found to be a perfect match, and I got the call like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I called him all excited. I'm like, I got a kidney. He's like, I know, I'm a match. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Why are you calling me? I was like, no, the hospital called. And he goes, what? So then he came to the hospital, and apparently was out in the waiting room saying no, it was supposed to be his kidney he was supposed to give, but I didn't know that. And it ended up being a dry run as well. And he came in, he's like, it's all right, you've got mine. And he knew it was supposed to be him, and he was the only person that could calm me down at that point in time. And like I said, it's the best kidney function I've had in my life. So it's been a roller coaster for sure. I've had times where I just know I say to the doctors, all right, my anxiety is a little too much. I need to go on meds for a little bit. And I think that's where having the right doctors is super important. I've not been afraid to fire doctors in my lifetime if they're not a good fit. And that, like you say about your doctor, Phil, my doctor has called me on his personal cell phone and talked to me for like 30 minutes about certain things. And that's the type of doctor you need in your corner.
Yeah. One thing I like about you guys' relationship, and I've seen, I've been around your relationship since you guys literally started, and you guys champion each other, and that's important, and to see that, where one can get down, the other one understands your plight, because sometimes in these relationships, what we go through, somebody else might not understand completely. And if you got a rock, Victoria being Tony's rock and Tony being Victoria's rock, that's big because you guys can identify right away. Plus you guys got synergy with each other and a synchronicity, and then when something's going on, you both can identify quick, and that's good because when I was sick early age before I got married, nobody could understand. The girls I went out with at the time, and I at first I didn't get it. I was like, why don't you understand this? But then their situation wasn't nothing like mine, so they didn't get it. So that's what I like about you guys' relationship, where you guys have a commonality that understands each other and understands what each other went through, and can relate. And that's where I'm going with that. And that's why I like that a lot.
And sometimes, the side effects of the meds are a big part of your life. And that's the thing. Like, he knows when I'm having a bad day, like it's just the meds are messing with me, something's not. And we've jokingly said to each other, okay, it's my day to be going wacky with the meds, so you can't today, guys. One of us at a time.
Right. My day is my day for it. Okay. You had your day.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, another thing that people don't realize is that a transplant is not a cure. It's a treatment.
Right.
And for us, people say marriage is 50-50. Well, in a Pollyanna world, sure, it's 50-50. But with us, it could be 80-20. It could be 90-10. It could be 60-40. It's very rarely is it 50-50. So, we really know what the other is going through. We know when each other's having bad days or not so good days. And we pick each other up. And that's a real success of our marriage.
Beautiful.
Yeah, by what you guys just talked about between the three of you is a key example of a saying that, as I'm pretty sure a bunch of people say is, but the easiest thing to do is get married. The hardest thing to do is to stay married.
Yep.
And I say, and I compare the two because the both of you, like you said, it could be one day, it could be Victoria, not the best and having, issues, here and there, or it could be Tony, or, it could be both. And so when you have to live that way, if you don't understand the other person, the person that you're supposed to love and the person that you're living with, that can escalate to something that it shouldn't even escalate to. But when you understand each other and understand what each other is going through, it's a lot easier to just say, okay, I get, go lay down, go in there, get away from me. I still love you, but go in there, go to timeout or something. And so, I've that, to me, I think people don't understand. That's why a lot of the older generation, they stay together 50, 60 years, because the chemistry between them was real. It wasn't just, oh, I met this chick at the club the other day, she cute, got body. I'm getting married to this chick right here. Like, it wasn't just that. It was, hey, let's spend some time together. Let's see, where time takes us, and they actually work through things together. They didn't just at the drop of a hat, just say, okay, I'm having issues with the chick, I'm done, or with this dude, I'm done. I'm up, I'm gone. So the fact that you two were able to work through these lopsided situations at times says a lot to both of you. I understand it's a lot easier for both of you to understand the other's perspective because you kind of both deal with the same thing. But we all know as transplant patients that nobody takes the same roads to the ending result that they're at right now.
Exactly.
It's nowhere near possible. You know, it's millions of people probably with kidney disease, but I guarantee we didn't all get there the same way.
Yep.
You know, we've
true.
dealt with this issue, and even dealing with that issue was a different route to get to that issue. You know, so I applaud both of you for making it happen, being each other's rock, holding each other, and keeping each other in those times, because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. You know,
we even say sometimes we didn't really have a choice because we both kind of fought this relationship because of what happened with our first marriages. But it just happened so naturally, and we were so drawn to each other when we shared our stories and what we had went through with our first marriages, that even with him living 2 hours away, we couldn't fight it. So it went from, yeah, he's 2 hours away, that's going to be really good for me, this doesn't have to get serious, and he may come visit like once a month, to, oh, he's coming every weekend, and if he doesn't come, I really miss him, what is going on, to my best friend saying, ooh, you love him. Don't say that. So we both tried as hard as we could to fight this relationship, but God had a definite different plan for us. We swear to it. And now we definitely wouldn't trade it for the world, because it has been, oh, you're having a bad day. Okay, I'll do the dishes. I'll cook dinner. Or, you know, he does laundry, which is amazing. So it makes a huge difference.
Only because you're too short and you have to stand on your head to get inside the washing machine.
This is true. That's what he tells me.
That's funny. That's all right.
So we touched on the YNOTT Foundation, you know, a little while ago, but and Mr. Cook, if you want to definitely want to chime in on this as well. This is a question for you also, because you know, you kind of talked about how you got acquainted with Edward, and you know, him explaining what the YNOTT Foundation and his idea and his vision. What was your, like, what has it been like working with the YNOTT Foundation, and what about it made you say, I can do this, you know, for a while? You know, I love, you know, his idea, I respect it, you know, because it has to be that it factor that just kind of made you just say, you know, I'm down with Edward. You know, and everybody has arguments and whatnot like that. That's just kind of, you know, that's life, you know. But I know you've been here, a part of this organization for a while, as long as Mr. Cook, and for you guys to have these, I don't want to say fallouts in ugly, but disagreements, you know, but you're still here. You're still fighting, you know, for the organization, still fighting for the kids, you know, and to make things happen. So what was it that's making, you know, the three, Tony, also to be able to support Victoria and her endeavor with the YNOTT Foundation? What was it that made you say, okay, yeah, no, I can do this till I'm blue in the face, and you know, never want to give up, you know, working with this foundation?
Well, early on, one of our first dates was actually going to the YNOTT launch party. So Tony got introduced really early on as well. But for me, one is, like I said, is Edward's personality is infectious. Like, he gets these visions in his head, and he gets so pumped and so excited about them that you can't help but join in that excitement and, like, okay, tell me how we're going to make this work. And he just, once you get to know him, you're no longer just a friend, you're family. And I don't really think Edward and I have had a disagreement along the way. We've had conversations where we'll call and talk some things out, or go through some things that might be going on in our head. And I think that's part of it too, is he's always willing to listen to you, be honest. And he takes it all in stride, and he's willing to use whatever you say to better himself, better the foundation, and then he'll turn around and do the same thing for you. He'll be honest with you to help you better yourself and better what you're doing, whether it be for his foundation or whether it be for something else in life. Because like with Team Ohio, he was the pediatric liaison, and there were several times I had phone calls with him on Team Ohio stuff as well, to bounce some things off of him or to work through some things. And I think that's what makes it's like a partnership. He's willing to listen to you, and then he'll be there to listen, to have you, he'll call to have you listen to him. And so you just feel like he's always just been there. And for the kids, like when you see him around the kids just love that man. He just gets down on their level and is so active. I don't know how he does it, because there's times I'm exhausted after a day at camp, but he is right along doing every activity that they're doing and keeping up. And he just develops these bonds with these kids because of it that you can't question, because the kids are always like, they call me Mama Kidney at camp. They always have for the longest time now, as long as I can remember. And there's times they'll be like, have you talked to him? How's he doing? And when he moved out of Ohio, a lot of them were like, do you think we'll hear from him again? Do you think we'll see him? And I'm like, you'll see Edward again. And he's come back for camp or for events. And he just, once he develops these bonds with these kids, he's there. His presence doesn't go away. And I think that's what's super important for these kids.
Definitely. It's crazy that you mentioned that last part about how the kids love him. I told him, I sent him a message on Father's Day. I said, I know you don't have any biological kids. I said, but you touched thousands around the country. And I said, happy Father's Day. I said, because to me, that's important to tell people like that, especially when they don't have kids. Yep. And they're doing their all for other kids. When you make that connection, with these kids like that, it's important to them. Like Victoria said, they're looking for him, during camp or during events and things of that nature, which I'm sure the same thing for Mr. Cook and Victoria as well, because you guys make that connection with kids, and it's very important to them, because even the ones that you may not conversate with all the time, or get in deep conversation with, they might be dealing with something when it comes to parental issues or something like that. But, and they're like, man, I'm coming to camp to get away from these people, and so when they come to camp or some kind of event and they see you, the people that they're like probably will waiting for months to get to for an event or something, I'm 99.9% sure it puts a smile on their face. It puts, light in their heart to be able to say, I appreciate this person caring about me. So I definitely can, I definitely agree with you without actually seeing these things, just because of the fact that I've seen, the pictures and all these things like that, all of you, have taken over the years in various events and, the drop-offs and stuff like that. So I can agree with you on that for sure. Mr. Cook, what about yourself?
Well, Eddie and I met when I was on dialysis, and I was about to receive my second transplant, and he was still on dialysis. One of my nurses came to me because my doctors had me going to different hospitals and children's hospital like every other month, speaking to the kids and stuff like that. And a nurse came to me and she was like, you need to meet this guy, Eddie. And he and I met, and I had just received my transplant, and he was on dialysis at the time. And he had YNOTT, and we just started working together. He's like my little brother, man. That's funny. Victoria says he'll call me up 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Man, I got this idea, this. He's so excited. And I'm the type of dude where I'm listening to the idea and my mind goes into, he's a visionary for the YNOTT. And my mind goes into, okay, how are we going to do this? Okay, all right, let me start putting together the pieces. And Eddie just runs. He just, hey, I want to do this. I go, all right, man. Well, we got to figure out how we're going to do it. We can't just, now we got to start putting things together. And that's where we go. And as brothers, we have bumped heads. And we bumped heads because we're all for the one thing, pediatric transplant kids. Simple as that, So you like any brothers, you're gonna have, you're gonna bump heads. But what keeps us going is the kids. I was 18 when I got sick, so he was a young guy. So all you guys were younger than that. So we understand being pediatrics at the time. It's almost like a relationship, like you said, like back in the day in the 60s and stuff, when people got married, it was just them against the world. So it wasn't like, okay, I can't go nowhere, you can't go nowhere, so we just gonna figure this out. And that's how we look at YNOTT, especially he and I with it. Like, okay, well, we can't go nowhere because we know what we got to do, so we're just gonna figure this out. So we'll stop the bickering and get to the task at hand. And so far so good. It's worked, and that's how it is.
Right, definitely. I mean, me and Edward had our our days of bickering and arguing. He's like, no, man, I don't want to do that. And I'm like trying to explain to him, why it's actually a good idea to do it. And I'm like, no, I don't think we should do this. And he's like, no, but because it X, Y, Z. And I'm like, I'm actually sitting there going, man, I don't even want to talk about this no more. But I'm like, man, I just work here.
When Eddie gets something in his head, it's like it's going this way.
Right. He's gonna make it happen.
We'll make it happen, So
he's gonna say it to the right person, and then the right person's gonna be like, "I see what you're saying." Well, he may have told it to 3 people before that, but he'll get to the right person. They'll be like, "Okay, yeah, I see where you want to do. This is what He's like, "Yes, finally, somebody's in my head," and.
And sometimes I had to make him slow down so I can understand what's going on. I'll be like, all right, slow down and give me your vision so I can see it. Let me process what you're saying, because you're going so fast that I'm not understanding. And once I can see it, then I can go, okay, so other words, we can do A, B, C, D. You like Victoria said, yes, we can. I go, okay, well, this is the first things first. We got to start doing this, and we got to start doing that, and then we got to, go with the processes. But
because he's 5 steps ahead of you when he starts telling
you. So he is, and you got to bring him back to step A. Yeah, you got to bring him back down. Like, okay, where do we start from? Because like I told him, sometimes I tell him, I go, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, Eddie. We can't just eat the whole elephant all one bite. We have to break these things down. And Phil, you're on these calls. You understand. We're breaking things down and stuff. And he's the visionary. And I tell him all the time. I go, don't get confused with all the other things. You have to be the visionary for the YNOTT Foundation. That is your job. Your job specifically is the vision. Our job is to put these visions together. And that's how it goes. It's not an ego thing, but that's what we want you to do. I need your visions. Okay, don't get confused with all the other stuff. As you give us the vision, our job is to put things together.
That's definitely true, 100%. And you actually just kind of not necessarily got me out of trouble, but you got me some laughing moments, because Edward always bringing up the fact that I would be emailing him, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, would you want me to call you at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning? I'm like, I'm trying to give you space in an email. I know your phone and laptop not going to go bling or nothing like that. Right. So I send it and he's like, man, I get up and check my emails, and he sent me something at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay, you want me to forget my idea or what? What's the problem? Like, so when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm straight. I don't want to hear him ever say that again. Talking to me. If you did the same thing, brother, and I know he was probably trying to keep that under wraps for a minute too. But this is just, for people watching, man, this is the YNOTT family. This is how we are. We appreciate each other. We love each other. We work with each other. So it's always business and fun and games at the same time. We know to have fun, but we know to get stuff done at the same time. Because like you said, Edward's a visionary. We get the stuff done, put these things together, and make them happen. That's our goal, is to make these things happen for not only the kids. I mean, our focus is the kids, but it's also to help the families and things like that. So for my last question, if Cook has 20 questions, he's more than welcome. But for the both of you, outside of each other, what is your support group?
Probably it is the transplant family, because
definitely,
like when we decided that we were going to get married, we were like, we'll just go to the courthouse. And then we told a couple people that, and they're like, wait, what? We've watched your whole relationship unfold, and we don't get to see you say I do. And we're like, okay, my goodness. So we ended up getting married on a baseball field, and
I remember.
Yep, we have a picture in a frame of transplant family that came to the wedding, of donor families, of living donors, of recipients. And that picture is framed here in our house because that was half of the people at our wedding was our transplant family. So it was our regular family and our transplant family. And they're just the ones who, when something's amiss, you can call and be like, have you ever dealt with this? Like, not to say my regular family is not supportive. They are. I am 47 years old, and if I go in the hospital, they're still there. They're still texting. They're still, what's going on? But I just think the transplant family has a different view of things when you're going through it, that somehow helps you get through that mountain that you feel like you're climbing, even though it may not be a big mountain to some. Everybody's mountain is different, and you need somebody to help you climb it. And I just think the transplant community truly understands that, and you can call on them at any time, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. and they're there to, I've had those phone calls once in a while from people. So I'm usually up, though, because I don't go to bed till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, most of the time. So that's why I'm not an early riser. But they just can give you a different perspective on what you're dealing with, and help you to sort through it a different way than the normal person who has not dealt with health issues can do. So
that's the same thing with me. I mean, I can talk to my brother or other family members, and it's just not quite the same. They kind of understand, but when you actually talk to a transplant recipient, they know. And another thing about our transplant friends and family is that we'll look at people who have not had a transplant, and they'll be complaining about this, that, and the other, and we'll both be thinking, my God, that is so trivial. Just be happy with what you got. And and other transplant recipients understand our way of thinking. It's like, don't sweat the small stuff. It's not worth it.
Right.
Because it's like our brothers, every year, we celebrate transplant anniversaries. We tell them they're our hero, and they're just like, it's not that big of a deal. Anybody would have done it. I'm like, no, not anybody would have done it, because I've had several friends who's had nobody be tested to be living donors for them. So not everybody would have done it. And it took Tony's brother being at opening ceremonies in Cleveland for the games saying, okay, I'm kind of getting it now. Like, it's making a little bit more sense to me now that I've seen it in this. So the one-on-one, they don't really get the impact that it's made. They just think, hey, I did it for my sibling. Anybody would have. But then when they see the grander scheme of things, they're like, okay, it starts to make sense.
Because I know someone whose who was on dialysis, and he's got 6 siblings, and not one of them would be tested.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's just unfathomable. I can't comprehend that. And it wasn't until he got really sick that one stepped up to be tested. Unfortunately, they were not a match, a good enough match, or something was wrong that it wasn't a viable match, and he had to wait another 6 months to a year before he actually did receive a deceased donor kidney. So our brothers can say all they want that it's no big deal that anybody would do it. It's not true. It really is not true. And what they did for us is just amazing.
Yeah, it's you bring up going to the game, and it's my mission actually for next year's game is to get as many of my family members to go as possible. I mean, it's 2 hours away. So it's not like you have to get on a plane to get there. So you don't have to, pay for a $600 something ticket, to fly, across the United States to get there. You get in your car, you drive south, and you get there. So it's and here's the thing, I just want them to be there. So I don't even mind if, only thing that they paying for is a hotel. Of course, I know that some things you got to register, so they would have to register anyways. But I'm not tripping on if they wearing Team SoCal stuff or anything like that. I'm probably not even gonna be wearing Team SoCal stuff. I'll probably be in YNOTT stuff. But it's like for me, I just want them to get the experience, and I want them to kind of understand. Number one, what I've been fighting for all this time, not just in myself, but for others as well, where I could before this show and before YNOTT, wasn't as, I would say it wasn't as much of a major issue for me. It was, I just didn't have the leeway and direction to be able to do it, which is, every time I bring Edward up, I say I appreciate him and I thank him because I think I told this story one of the first times we kind of told each other stories, stuff like that during a meeting. But I went to multiple other organizations looking to them to basically do what I'm doing. Why not? And nobody gave me a shot. And that is outside of the kids and their families. And just the good people in our organization is probably the biggest reason why I work as hard as I do, is because it was something that I wanted to do and nobody gave me a shot, But Edward, without even really knowing who I was, we had probably 2 conversations prior to us having the Zoom call when he was like, yeah, come on board and XYZ, and we had our conversation and stuff. And that was the one we had at the games. And then like a day of text messaging. So, for him to give me that opportunity without even really knowing like what kind of person I was, because everybody's not fit to do what we do.
Sure.
They might even have the heart for it and they care, but they may not have the patience, or the time, or it's a bunch of things that go into the factor of what we do as advocates, whether it's for adults or for kids. This is actually part of the question I just asked you, but it's kind of a flip to it, because this doesn't involve both of you together, kind of like the last one did. But before you got married, like I said, I know now both of you, you're each other's rock, you get each other through, each other's support. As children coming up, as minors, who's your biggest support? Like, who's the one who, when you need to talk about certain things and or you need to go to an appointment, and the person who normally would take you wasn't able to be there, but you'd call them and say, hey, I need to get to XYZ appointment, or I need to go to the emergency room, or I need to do this, I need to do that. And you can just call them up and say, hey, can you come get me or help me get to, XYZ point? Like, who was that one person that you felt that you could always go to as a kid coming up with these with organ failure and these other health issues?
Well, with me, as far as kidney issues, it was a bit strange. I look back at it now and I kind of shake my head because I didn't have a nephrologist growing up. All I had was a general practitioner that took care. I didn't really have kidney appointments. I wasn't followed by a kidney doctor. So any other medical issues that I had growing up, it was my parents that took me to appointments or stay with me in the hospital. So in that regard, I look back and I think, well, if I had only had been followed by a nephrologist at that time, maybe I wouldn't have gone into failure when I did. But there's so many what ifs with my life as far as that goes that I can't dwell on it like I think I should, but I'm not going to because there's nothing's going to change it.
Right.
So I would say my biggest advocates at growing up were my parents. Although it was weird because actually my kidney disease and my only having half of a kidney wasn't really discussed a whole lot growing up. Every once in a while, if I was tired, it was mentioned, but or a new school year with a new teacher, it was told to them that I may be a little bit more tired than usual some days, and not to panic or think something's wrong. It's just the way my body works. But like I said, I had a fairly normal childhood, and just the normal stuff popped up. Like I had an appendicitis, and tonsils, and things like that. So I, growing up, it was truthfully my parents were my voice, my advocate when I ever had to go in the hospital or anything went wrong.
For me, it would it would be the same. My mom was actually my biggest voice because she fought with doctors saying something was wrong. It wasn't normal until they finally did refer me to a nephrologist. But she didn't really drive on interstates at all. So it was my grandparents, my grandma and gramps is who we called for every emergency. If my dad was working, it was them that was driving us everywhere, taking us to all the appointments, getting me wherever I needed to be. The middle of the night, rushing to the hospitals was usually my dad. But if they had to be at home with my brothers, then it was my grandma and gramps that were sitting by my hospital bed. One of the two were there all the time. So those were the four that really were constantly there for me. I had got a friend who was probably the first one that tried to understand. In junior high school, we were 12 and we're still friends to this day because she was probably the first person in my life that had tried to understand what I was going through, and that I may be sick at times. And if I wasn't at school, she would check in. And so we've been friends since we were 12, and we're still friends to this day. And there's still times I'm like, you don't know how much I appreciate the fact that you stuck there for that friendship through countless hospital stays, countless rumors that she could have believed and didn't. But that was probably the first time I had a friend who stuck by when there were multiple hospital stays and was willing to come to the hospital and see me. And so it's probably why we're friends to this day. So.
It's crazy that you bring up that relationship, and it's something I meant to ask you earlier, and I forgot real quick. As soon as I thought about it, it was kind of gone. I was sitting there while you was talking, going, "What was I going to ask?" But
It's the meds.
it's definitely. Oh my God, it's the myth. It's the myth and the fact that I had a, when you gotta have brain surgery, man, your memory is horrible at times. So, but I want to know, um, as kids growing up, and Victoria actually kind of touched on it a little bit. What was your experience like trying to, I guess, explain your issues, illness to people in your age group? When you were younger, or did you even try to? Did you just like, you know, live your life and not really kind of worry about, talking about it or what? Because that's what I did. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't talk about my kidney disease until probably college. I went literally all the way through school. The only people who knew when I was in school was, like you said, my teachers. Because one thing that they always say, when you got to go to the bathroom, you go. And so I had to make sure that those conversations were had with my teachers. So they know if you tell me no, and I really got to go, I'm going. And so I don't want you mad because I'm going to walk out the class. You can call my dad if you want to. He's not going to listen to you because he's the one who instructed me to do it. So, like I said, I didn't talk to anybody in my age range, like I said, until college. I maybe told 4 people when I had my transplant. That was just because those are my friends from day one, basically, of 9th grade. And they were always there. We were always on the phone and stuff like that. And so those are like the only people, like nobody knew. I had so many people coming to me asking me, did I flunk and all this other stuff, because I ended up coming back. I had my transplant the second semester of my senior year in the very beginning. So I had to, I didn't have to. It was just something that, I had a retarded counselor and she gave me some wrong information. But so I didn't go to school for that semester. So I decided to, do the smart thing. I had the time because I was technically a year younger than everybody else, and a year behind the time that they would have kicked me out. I didn't even graduate at 19. I graduated at 18 like everybody else was supposed to. Originally I was supposed to be 17, but so I had that time. So I used it. I said, I'm not going to go to adult school, So I went back to high school, did my classes, did prom, played sports again, all that stuff. But like I said, those are the only people I told. Even like I said, that last year when I went back, I didn't tell anybody. Like I said, summer school, I came back summer school, and that's all they kept. So, Philip, you flunked this, and I'm like, first off, you were supposed to graduate last year too, and you're sitting across from me right now in class. So you tell me what's going on. And so, but like I said, I didn't feel comfortable until actually, so I went back to college. I didn't really tell anybody either when I first started. Before I got sick, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody until I went back, and that was just because I was in a teacher's program, and we used to go to conferences and stuff like that. Way up north or in another state, and so I was consistently, in a different state or city with 5 or 6 people. And so I needed them to know, my issue, because if anything happens, those are the people that they're going to go to, or the people who are going to be there when it happens or whatever. So I was actually kind of forced at the time, because I wasn't so outspoken like I am now with it, to be able to just say, hey, I have plenty of these. I've been doing it for this long, doing this, and stuff like that, and just kind of having the conversation. So, well, how, that's just always been a question I had to ask people, because like I said, I know some people were able to come up with kidney camps, stuff like that, where they know, people in their age or younger or older, and can, talk to them about it because they know what's going on. It's like you said, not everybody understands. It's not the easiest thing to just talk to somebody about and hope that they understand what a creatinine is, or what your blood pressure should be. You trying to vent and talk about things that you're worried about health wise, and they don't have a clue about what you're saying. They're just sitting over there nodding and looking at you going, uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Oh, really? For real? And they don't know what you're saying. So I know that had to be kind of hard. It was hard for me, and I chose not to say anything. So, like how was, what was that like growing up, making that decision if you want to tell somebody or not?
Well, growing up for me, it really didn't come up very often.
Mm-hmm.
The only time it came up was like in locker rooms when I had my shirt off and they could see all my scars in my sides. And it's like, what the H happened to you? And it's like, well, I lost a kidney when I was a baby. And that's pretty much as far as it went. A few would ask a few more questions, but it never, I wasn't really comfortable talking about it. So it didn't really go too much further than that. So, and they could tell I was uncomfortable talking about it. So that's really the only times that if with my peers, I mean, some of my best friends growing up, they knew I'd had the missing kidney, but it was never brought up. So I would say locker room's about the only time when they actually saw the scars that it was brought to my attention or brought to their attention, so to speak.
For me, it was very different because unfortunately I was sick a lot as a kid. So I was in and out of the hospitals a lot. So of course that sparked questions from people. Unfortunately, a lot of the times the questions went to my brother, I think because people were afraid to ask me questions. So people would say to your brothers, "Oh, what's going on with your sister?" Or, what's she going through now? Or
was she pregnant by this?
Yeah, that's true. But so a lot of times people didn't come to me and ask me. Like I said, my friend Tara is probably the first one who, instead of listening to rumors or just going along with what everybody else said, "What is going on with you? Why are you in the hospital so much? Why?" Like, she's the first one that really was willing to learn about what I was going through and actually care. Like, some people would ask a couple questions and then they'd be bored with it. Be like, "Oh, okay, whatever." So I think really my brothers got more questions than I got about it, because they're like, "Oh, why is your sister in the hospital again? And why are you with only your grandparents and your parents are at the hospital?" So I think they got asked more questions than I did growing up, because I just think people were afraid to broach the subject. Whether it was because they didn't want to really know the in-depth stuff, or if it was just they thought I'd be offended by the questions. I don't honestly know. I know several people after high school, when they found out I was getting a transplant, they're like, "I had no idea you were that sick." So I think a lot of it was fear, because people just aren't educated about kidney health, and they just were afraid to ask questions, or I don't honestly know what made them not really want to ask those questions. But like I said, my brothers got asked all the time why I was in the hospital again, but most people did not approach me about it.
So, Mr. Cook, you have any questions, or you want to say any last words to Tony?
I just want to say thank you for coming on the show, and like I said, you guys are champions for me. Especially as a relationship. Relationship goals right there for real. So it's beautiful. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
And we appreciate being asked to be on the show.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, both of you, for sharing your time with us too, and as well as the people watching. Definitely appreciate your story. Appreciate you. We kind of talk and see each other quite a bit, but it's like I told you before, it's a family thing. So,
Definitely.
Yes.
so definitely look forward to a lot of things that Why Not is doing. That we're currently working on, and a process of I don't want to say releasing a song. We're gonna drop an album, but um,
You
we're
never
getting
know. I mean, we do have a book, so
right. So, but yeah, we pretty much work consistently as a team to get stuff done. If you know anybody in pediatrics, pre and post transplant, you always get in touch with myself, Mr. Cook, Victoria. It's not hard to get a hold of us, especially when you need to get information. Uh, Why Not also has a Facebook and Instagram page, Why Not Connect, um, and a revamped website, which is whynot.org. Uh, and we're all on social media for the most part, and Facebook for sure.
True.
So if you need, like I said, you need to talk to us, whether it's mentorship, whether it's support groups, whether it's just vent, ask questions. You got 4 kidney warriors right here that can pretty much answer any question that you have for the most part, because we've all been
not, I'll
going
find
through
it.
it for a while.
Yep.
You said what?
If not, I'll find an answer.
Right.
Right.
No, that Victoria would definitely find an answer. If she doesn't know something, she would definitely find out. And by the next time you guys talk, she'll have an answer or before then. So, but again, I appreciate all of you being on. Mr. Cook, appreciate you hosting the show with me today. Look forward to next Sunday. I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday. Enjoy the food, enjoy your families, enjoy the fireworks, enjoy the festivities, and we will see you next weekend. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.